Some people are yelling out here outside of my apartment. It's like February 15th of 2015. These sting operatives are being that are surrounding my apartment. They're being very active and they're being very loud. There are a bunch of people over on the other side of the walkway. They're standing on the porch. There's some kind of a fight going on. There's a bunch of people out there talking about it. There's more people that are standing over there. There's a whole bunch of groups of people standing around making loud comments. There's a group of people that are over there on the far building. It sounded like there's some sort of an altercation going on in the parking lot out here. A whole bunch of people were yelling, basically staging. Now, before I relate all this that just happened, let me refresh your memory that I am surrounded by a sting operation by people in Portland Police Department and by the Multnomah County pedophile sheriffs, and they have been staging street theater performances here quite often. They'll stage fights, they stage arguments, and then they either go inside their apartments or they'll stage, or in this particular case, they staged and committed some sort of a fight argument out in the parking lot out here. This is a repeated process here at this apartment building. This apartment building has mostly white people. This area is called Misty Firs Apartments. There's like 16 apartments on the other side of the courtyard, and there's like 16 apartments in this particular building. There's a third building that's over there that has like, I don't know how many apartments. I never actually counted, but it's less than 16 apartments, even though it's about the same size building as these other two buildings. And the reason why it has less apartments is because that's where like the laundry room is, and probably where the maintenance, they have probably one area just reserved for maintenance where they store their equipment and tools and whatnot. And not to mention the apartments that are in the back are like 2-bedroom apartments, I think. Whereas the building that's on this side of the courtyard and the building that's on this side of which I reside in, these have 1-bedroom apartments. It's a relatively big area, relatively. Well, the police department has been renting multiple apartments surrounding my apartment. Most of the sting operatives that are here are in this particular building. The apartment manager is a part of the sting operation, and she is assisting these sting operatives in these staged street theater performances that they're using and engaging in. When I first moved into this apartment building, the apartment manager resides and lives on the property, and she previously lived right next to her office, which is on the other side of this courtyard. Well, after I moved into this apartment and the Portland Police and the County Sheriff started taking over the surrounding apartments surrounding mine, they took over the apartment right next door to me here. They took over the apartment next door to me over here, and they took over the apartment directly below mine. Well, the apartment manager joined into this sting operation, and she moved from that building to this building, and she moved into the apartment right next door to the apartment down below where the police department is renting that apartment. And it's that apartment that's directly below mine and right next to the apartment managers. It's that particular apartment where they have their street theater performing civilian operatives stage their skits and their street theater performances, and they quite literally wait in ambush for me to like leave this apartment, and they'll stage like, okay, they have me under illegal video surveillance in this apartment here, and if I'm disabled, I don't really leave this apartment except like once or twice a month. I'm partially paralyzed. I bleed internally. It's not easy for me to walk. I'm in a lot of pain. It's painful for me to move around. It's painful for me to do nothing. But the more I move around, the worse my internal bleeding gets. So I, for the most part, I either sleep or in my bed, which is right here in the living room. Down there, it's probably not showing up very well because the lighting in here is crappy. That box is sitting right on top of my bed. The box is showing up pretty well. I have there's some more screaming going on out there right now. This time it sounds like a kid screaming. And it's not play screaming that's going on out there. It's a kid out there yelling bloody murder. So it's not play screaming. It's this is the type of street theater performances. I don't know if this phone just caught that or not. I could hear it, but it's distant. It sounds like it's coming from the other side over there. It's loud enough for me to hear it, but my fan noise is probably louder to this to the receiver of this phone than actually the sound of that scream. I can hear it out there, but I don't know if this phone is catching it or not. But they've been staging all kinds of street theater performances here. My wife was having an affair with a cop. My wife and her side of the family got recruited into sting operations, and my wife was recruited our daughters into this lifestyle of being groupies essentially to law enforcement, which means they're essentially civilian operatives for law enforcement. And one of their first acts after they turned my wife against me, one of their first decisions that they made right after they turned my wife against me behind my back was to frame me for a pedophile. They had my wife and our daughters turned against me, so they knew it would be easy to frame me as a pedophile. All they had to do was make me look like a bad guy. That's all they had to concentrate on, because they had enough people to lie for them, to testify for them and against me. They had enough people in the family turned against me behind my back that it was just a matter of them just making me look like a bad guy. So they were using sting tactics to set me up as a pedophile, and they were using an officer as a photo double. And I caught them in the act doing this shit. And I basically caught these motherfuckers I caught my wife and her fuck buddies in the Portland Police Department literally breaking into my home, and they were making child porn, and our daughters were assisting them in this, and they had some other female child that was involved with this that I don't even know who the fuck the person is. Multiple people broke into my home. They were making child porn. They were having sex. There were several of them that were involved in this, and they were essentially staging sex and having sex, and they murdered somebody that was underage. I don't know how old the person was. I don't know for certainty the person's name. I don't know who the person is. I have no idea. But they did this when I was in my own. They did this in my apartment when I was in the apartment, and it was early in the morning. I was asleep. Their activities in my apartment woke me up. I was asleep in the living room on the couch by the front door, near the front door. Just like how I sleep in the living room right now. I have my bed right now here in this living room. There's the kitchen right there. Well, I was sleeping in the living room. Well, they broke in through our goddamn bedroom windows. My wife let them in through her damn bedroom window. And at the very least 2 male officers and 1 female sneaked into our home via that means, and they were making and staging porn is what they were doing. And one of the females that they snuck in with them was apparently underage, and they were deliberately and intentionally making they were making child porn essentially. My wife's lover, Officer Eric Carlson of the Portland Police, and apparently she has another lover by the name of Officer John Ray. They both broke in, and they were staging sexual scenarios and basically engaged in sexual activities with my wife and with our youngest daughter while I was in the living room asleep on the couch. This didn't happen at this apartment. This is at another apartment. It's 2015 right now. Well, when this occurred, this was 2007. When they committed this crime, it was 2007. Well, they were doing this with the intent of framing me for the crimes. Officer Eric Carlson was dressed like me. He dyed his hair blonde like mine, and he was acting as a double. And they were taking side shots and back shots of him while he's dressed like me. The reason I know all this is because of the simple fact that their activities woke me up. And my initial impression of what I was catching was, oh, gee, I'm catching my wife in her affair with an armed Portland cop. That's a fucking look-alike. And I already knew my wife had our daughters turned against me. So, as far as I was concerned, I was catching them in the act of possibly framing me for something. I didn't know what. But I already knew that Officer Eric Carlson was a look-alike, and I already knew that that my wife and her daughters were referring to this officer by the nickname of Double Click because they were admitting and referring to him as a twin to somebody. But they didn't want me to know he was a look-alike to me. They were trying to hide that from me. And they didn't realize it, but I found out about it. So I knew their big secret was they were palling around and sleeping around with cops, and that one of the cops they were sleeping with was a look-alike to me. Now, he's a brunette, and I'm a blonde. But I discovered in 2005 that this dude was dyeing his fucking hair blonde, and so I knew he was impersonating me, and I tried to warn people about it. And my wife had poisoned me for trying to warn people about it. And I'm just basically, if you've ever seen the movie Misery, you see the main dude of that movie. He's pretty much, for the most part of the movie, is debilitated and unable to care for himself and unable to find help, and is being kept in a debilitated condition. Well, guess fucking what? That's what they did to me in 2005. When I tried to warn people that they were using a double, that's when my wife poisoned me. And they had me in a severely debilitated condition. So I was unable to warn people, and I was unable to find help. I was severely debilitated, and my wife and her family and her fuck buddies in law enforcement basically kept me that way. So the years of 2005 through 2007, I can easily compare to the movie Misery, because for my part of this situation, because of the fact that that's what it was like for me. Imagine being under the care of the people that debilitated you, and they just do everything in their power to keep you that way, and that you're surrounded by people that just don't give a shit. Anyway, their activities woke me up. I could hear what sounded like sex noises and male voices whispering to my wife, and my wife's voice whispering to these male voices. So I was under the belief I'm catching my wife in her affair with these armed cops, and that they broke into my home with her help, obviously. I knew they were in my home. I realized right away they were in my home. Now, I had no intention of confronting them. I'm already in a debilitated condition from being poisoned by my wife and by our daughters who joined into this shit. And I decided at this point that I'm going to put an audio recorder in my wife's purse and then lay back down on the couch and pretend to be asleep. I deemed the situation the kind of situation where if I had confronted them, those cops would have just pulled out their guns and shot me right then and there. And then just fake justification like cops always do. So I deemed it to be a life-threatening situation. I knew my wife and daughter were not in any danger from these people because I knew my wife and her daughters were sleeping around with these motherfuckers. So I didn't give a shit about their fucking safety. I already knew damn well they're pals with these people. As a matter of fact, my wife and her daughter was with these officers and were involved in this sexual activity behavior that they were involved in, of which woke me up. So I wasn't worried about their goddamn safety. I deemed it a life-threatening situation where I didn't know what was going on other than the fact that male officers were in my apartment with my wife and her daughters. They're trying to hide it from me, and it sounds like there's sexual activity going on. And I know damn well I can hear my wife whispering to a dude, and I can hear a dude whispering back to my wife. That's all I knew at that point as far as what was going on that morning. I did not realize they snuck in, along with these two male officers, they snuck in some female underage person. I have no idea who this person is, but they were using this person in their photogenic photo shit, and they fucking murdered her. They murdered her. I didn't realize a murder took place. I had no idea a murder took place. Well, my audio recorder caught them in the act. You can hear their female victim saying from another room. You can hear a female's voice saying, "No!" And then they silenced her, and then she didn't say another fucking word. She was dead. They silenced her. It's on the audio recording that I put in my wife's purse. I put the audio recorder in my wife's purse. I turned on the record button and I put it in her purse, knowing that within, at any minute, my wife was going to be leaving for work because it was almost time for her to leave for work. So I just went back I put the audio recorder in her purse. I just laid back down on the couch and then pretended to still be asleep. And I was listening and listening and listening. I just basically lay down on the couch, pretending to be asleep, and just listening to everything that was going on, trying to figure out what are they doing, what are they messing with, who are they talking to, and just listen. And I knew the whole fucking time that everything that was going on, my audio recorder was catching it. Now, I didn't hear, at the time it happened, I didn't hear the muffled sound of a female saying, "No!" and then that person was silenced. I didn't hear that, but the audio recorder caught it, just barely. And it's like right after I'm literally in the process of putting the audio recorder in my wife's purse and closing her purse and struggling to get to a standing position when that sound "No!" occurred, and I didn't hear it because I was in the kitchen at the time. Because I had to go into the kitchen to put the audio recorder in my wife's purse so that they wouldn't notice. And then I put her purse where she left it, and I just went right back to the couch and laid down. So I caught them in the act of breaking into my home, and they were, while my audio recorder was running, and I'm laying on the couch pretending to be asleep and just listening. I heard them leave our daughter's bedroom, and they went straight into my wife's bedroom. And I can hear what sounded like my wife whispering to at least two dudes. There was another female voice that whispered, but it sounded like the female voice was outside of the apartment. It sounded like my wife had her bedroom window wide open, and that there were some people outside of the apartment standing next to her bedroom window, and they were talking to my wife and to her lover through that bedroom window. And that's what it sounded like. Now, I couldn't hear everything that they're saying, but the audio recorder was catching it pretty damn well. But I could hear their whispering to one another, and I could hear them talking. I couldn't make out what they're saying. I could hear their whispering. I could hear their talking, but I couldn't hear it well enough to actually understand exactly what they were saying. But the audio recorder was catching it, and I knew the audio recorder was catching it. So I wasn't concerned about not being able to understand what I'm hearing them saying, because I knew damn well the audio recorder was catching it all. But I was paying attention as best as I could nonetheless. I was severely debilitated at this point. They had me severely poisoned. I couldn't see very well, and I couldn't hear very well either. So I had severe ear infections. I had chronic ear infections. Matter of fact, I think my ears were swollen because of the fact that I had ear infections. So I couldn't hear very well. I could hear well enough to know that they were whispering to one another and shit like this, and I could hear them talking to each other when they were like in my wife's bedroom. I could hear them talking, but I can't hear what they're saying. So I can hear the talking noises, but it's muffled enough to the point where I can't distinguish the actual words they're saying. But I knew damn well I can recognize my wife's voice very easily, and I can hear her talking with males that were in the apartment, and hear the males talking to her, and I can't, like I said, I may not have been able to distinguish what exactly they were saying at first, as a first-hand witness anyway. But I know damn well the audio recorder that I put in my wife's purse was catching it all. And my audio recorder did a pretty damn good job of catching everything that they're fucking saying. And this is how I know that what was going on. and everything, and what they did and what they admitted to, because my audio recorder is essentially catching them in the commission of a sting operation, and they were fucking staging and committing all the crimes with the intent of setting me up to get the blame. The reason they were taking photogenic photos while they were committing these crimes was because Officer Eric Carlson, the man that was having an affair with my wife, was dressed like me while he was in my apartment and was acting as a fucking double. And my wife and his partners in the Portland Police Department was taking side shots and back shots of him with photogenic cameras. And this is the reason and the purpose for them taking the photogenic photos. Now, that's enough for, I'm not going to go into the full story here. I don't want this to be a long video, but the point of the matter is, I've already done so on previous vlogs. The point of the matter is, I'm surrounded by a fucking sting. I've uncovered the fact that law enforcement and my wife and her daughters were having sexual relations with people in law enforcement, and they became involved in sting ops with law enforcement. And apparently sting ops with law enforcement involves sting ops committing all the crimes and doing all the wrongdoing with full intent of framing their innocent targets for the crimes. That's my understanding of a fucking police sting operation. They tried to murder me multiple times after that incident because they publicly gave me the blame for the fucking crimes that they committed. But they have no intention of having a trial. And they don't officially admit, like, there's news media is just mums the word about everything. This sting operation committed a rape and a murder. They had my wife and her daughter assisting them in this operation of theirs. They took part in these crimes. Now, it was the male officers that committed the actual homicide, but it was my wife and her daughters that were helping and assisting these officers and setting me up to get the blame. Well, these officers' girlfriends, I refer to them as the Portland Police Department's whores, they were printing flyers giving me the blame for the crimes that Officer Eric Carlson and Officer John Ray committed that morning. And these officers' whores quite literally took over the back of Clackamas Walmart and took over their office and took over their printers that they have at the office at Clackamas Walmart. And they were using those printers for 3 hours after these officers committed this murder. They used those printers for 3 hours printing flyers giving me the blame for the crimes. So they publicized the blame onto me. And it was Officer Eric Carlson and Officer John Ray's whores that printed the flyers. And they quite literally used Walmart office equipment and Walmart office supplies to do this. And these whores of these two Portland police officers were literally on the clock at Clackamas Walmart when they took over the Walmart printers there for the purpose of printing flyers. So quite literally, these Portland police officers, whores, were being paid by Clackamas Walmart to frame me for a fucking homicide that their fuck buddies in the Portland Police Department committed. How do I know all this? Because this is where my wife, I told you my wife at any minute was going to leave the apartment to go to work. And my wife is one of the whores that the Portland Police Department used to print the flyers. My wife and my wife's sister and two of my wife's daughters worked at Clackamas Walmart at the time. And they were on the clock at Clackamas Walmart when they printed the flyers giving me the blame. So quite literally, Officer Eric Carlson and Officer John Ray's whores literally took over the back of Clackamas Walmart for the purpose of printing flyers to give me the blame for the crimes they all just got done committing. And my audio recorder is catching that as well. Remember, I put my audio recorder in my wife's purse. My wife took her purse with her ass when she left the apartment to go to Clackamas Walmart to work. I basically caught this sting operation in the commission of a rape and a homicide, and caught them planning shit in my home to frame me for it, and caught these motherfuckers. They poisoned my coffee pot before they left the apartment, and caught them as a group outside of the apartment, briefly going over everything that they just did, comparing each other's notes and stuff to make sure it's like as though they had a checklist of things that they wanted done. And then they all head as a group of several people straight to Clackamas Walmart, where they proceed to brag to my wife's sister, Vicky Rosales, about every fucking thing they just did. And my wife's holding her purse during all this, and she's a part of that. So my audio recorder is essentially not only catching them in the act of a murder, it's catching them basically describing in virtually full detail how they did it, why they did it, everything. They admitted that they were setting me up as a pedophile. They were laughing. They're in celebration mode, by the way, when they were talking to my wife's sister. They were at Clackamas Walmart. They were literally in celebration mode. So keep in mind, everything that I'm relating to you right now is what they all, as a group, were fucking discussing at Clackamas Walmart, and they were in celebration mode. They bragged that they were framing me as a pedophile. They said my name when they said they're framing me as a pedophile. They admitted I was asleep at the time. They fucking admitted that Officer Eric Carlson was posing for photogenic photos in our daughter's bedroom. They admitted Officer Eric Carlson is sitting on our daughter's bed. They admitted they took pictures of his dick. They admitted they're using him as a fucking double. They admitted that they broke into our home. They admitted they got it all on photogenic photos. They admitted that our entire apartment was under video surveillance, and they admitted they wanted 630 taken off of the video surveillance and they were using Officer John Ray as their excuse for erasing a certain portion of their video surveillance. Now, the portion of their video surveillance is what my audio of their video surveillance that they wanted to erase. That's the portion of my audio recording that my audio recorder is catching. So, and during that time frame that they wanted to erase, that's when they committed the rape and the murder, and they were taking photogenic photos, and then they carried the body out the window. They started planting evidence in my home. They booted up our computer. They planted copies of the photogenic photos that they took on our computer. And they poisoned our coffee pot before they left the apartment. They admitted to that. They admitted Officer Eric Carlson poisoned my coffee pot. They admitted my wife helped him with that. And the whole time, keep in mind, everything that I've just pointed out to you that they're discussing with one another. And basically, they're just all bragging to my wife's sister. They're filling her in as to how it all went, basically. Keep in mind, they're in celebration mode while they're explaining all this shit. So they wanted to cover their asses because they know they're on video surveillance, and they were asking their superiors that showed up after this sting op got there to Walmart and started bragging to my wife's sister about 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, their superiors showed up to pick up the photogenic photos that these officers made. And that was the first thing that their superior said. They walked in asking for those photogenic photos that they took. That's what they showed up for, was to pick those up. And that was when Officer John Ray and some female officers that were a part of this thing was making a request to their superiors to have a certain portion of their video surveillance erased. So they were essentially, when their superior showed up, they were essentially talking about how they were talking about how they got it all on photogenic photos, and they're talking about how they also got it on video surveillance, and they talked about how they want their video surveillance erased. And their superiors showed up for the sole purpose of picking up what they just made, their photogenic photo, child porn crap. Well, my wife and her fuck buddies in law enforcement spent the next 3 hours in the back of Clackamas Walmart from this point forward. They spent the next 3 hours in the back of Clackamas Walmart bragging to Clackamas Walmart employees in the break room about everything that they just did. They bragged about how easy it is for them to use doubles. They bragged about the fact that they were setting me up as a pedo. And they were recruiting Walmart employees to lie for them. And they were printing flyers giving me the blame for the crimes they just committed. And by 9:30 that morning, they had everybody in the soft lines department agree to lie for them. That's the soft lines department at Walmart is the clothing department and the shoes department. If it's something that you wear, then it's the soft lines department, which is virtually almost half the store. My wife and her sister both work the soft lines department. When my wife, Joan Wager, and her lover, Officer Eric Carlson, found out that they got everybody in the soft lines department to lie for them, they decided to have celebration sex in the back of that store near the lockers. My wife's purse is in her locker. My wife, Joan Wager, and Officer Eric Carlson were having celebration sex near the lockers in the back of that store. And they were discussing the female child they murdered during their fucking celebration sex. How do I know? Because my audio recorder is still in my wife's purse and it's catching the whole goddamn thing. Needless to say, Portland police and law enforcement in this city or in this state or in this entire fucking country have no fucking intention of giving me a trial for jack fucking shit. Gee, let's see if I sit in a courtroom and say fucking nothing. Let's see if I sit in a courtroom and say nothing. Let's see if I give a rat's ass about court or due process or proper procedure or any fucking thing. Or let's see if I just take over the courtroom the same damn way the Portland Police Department and their fucking whores took over the back of Clackamas Walmart after they committed a rape and a murder. I'm not going to give a fucking flying shit about a court or a fucking judge or a fucking prosecutor. I'll kick the judge in the nuts just to draw attention to this fucking trial. I ain't going to give a shit. These people are murderers, and I don't give a fuck about their flying-ass opinion. I know damn well I caught these motherfuckers committing a goddamn fucking homicide. I'm a fucking witness to it. I can testify to their whereabouts before they arrived as a group. As a fucking group at Clackamas Walmart, I can testify to their activities as to what the fuck they were doing at my apartment. Jesus fucking Christ, man. I'm a witness to the fact that they're bragging to an entire fucking Walmart store, and that they fucking literally took over the office and the office equipment at Clackamas Walmart for the purpose of printing bullshit flyers, giving me the blame for their fucking shit. And Jesus Christ, everybody in that fucking store knew they used Officer Eric Carlson as a double. They're sitting around in the fucking break room, cracking fucking jokes about it. Vicky Rosales, my wife's sister, was laughing about how easy it is for Officer Eric Carlson to impersonate me and how he copies my mannerisms and everything. They were laughing about this shit but Jesus Christ, they were printing the flyers, giving me the blame, while my wife and her sister and her fuck buddies in the Portland Police Department were sitting around in that break room at Walmart. And they're just laughing about this fucking shit, man. They're laughing about it. Fucking pedophile judge can pound a gavel all damn day long for all I give a shit. I just discovered that the law enforcement in this town and their whores are nothing more than a bunch of organized murderers, and that they frame and murder people for fucking sport, and they treat it like it's a fucking sport, and they brag about it to their buddies and to their whores, and they celebrate doing this shit to people. They celebrate this shit. I guarantee you there is not a legal process in this fucking universe in this fucking country that I would honor or respect. I mean, if they showed up with a fucking warrant, I would be like, fuck you, kiss my ass. I'll spit on their fucking warrant. I don't give a shit. Go direct your brats to perform with your photo double some more, pedo cops. Fucking piece of worthless shit, motherfucking bastards. So I think you can see why I'm so cynical and why I'm so disgusted. And keep in mind, they tried to murder me multiple times. They did poison me that day. They poisoned my coffee pot, and I have them on an audio recorder bragging to that effect. So not only are they rapists and murderers and a bunch of pedophiles, they're serial killers, because I was a goddamn plasma donor when my wife started poisoning me with the blessings of the Portland Police Department. So they're serial killers as well. Now, I already knew in 2005 that my wife was cheating on me with a cop, and that he was acting as a look-alike, and discovered that this was open knowledge at Eastport Walmart. My wife worked at Eastport Walmart in 2005. In 2006, my wife, after she bragged in writing that she's a poisoner, and they tried to cover their asses, that's when my wife transferred from Eastport Walmart to Clackamas Walmart. And by this time, my wife, by late 2006, my wife and her sister and two of my wife's daughters were all working at Clackamas Walmart. So there's 4 family members that was working at Clackamas Walmart. And every damn one of them were involved in this. And I should point out the fact that our daughters were serving food to customers at Walmart, while my wife brags in writing and flaunts the fact she's a fucking poisoner. So, needless to say, law enforcement doesn't want people to know about this. They just want to cover up evidence and murder off witnesses, and deny witnesses any form of emergency help. Their favorite tactic is to vilify their victims. They stage crimes. to frame their victims. They vilify they use their sting operatives to vilify their victims. And they poison their victims to debilitate their victims so their victims can't get help. And this is the reason why I take the time to actually document these their terrorizing tactics. I'm quite literally surrounded by a sting. The apartment manager here is assisting these sting operatives. She literally moved from that building across the courtyard there to this building. The Portland police have the apartment there and there. As a matter of fact, they have virtually half, at the very least, half this building, if not the whole building. The one thing I've learned about sting operations is they tend to be much larger than what you would actually think that they are. And law enforcement and news media tries to hide the fact just how large police sting operations actually are. Anybody that is a buddy or a relative or a girlfriend to people in law enforcement is a sting operative. It doesn't matter what job they have. They can have a lowly job working at Walmart. They can have they could work at a high-paying job like at a utility or something, or they could work as tellers at a bank. It doesn't matter. It's like I said. They if they're buddies or relatives or girlfriends of people in law enforcement, they are sting operatives, and that essentially means they are the type of people that will back up any lie for law enforcement that law enforcement wants them to back up. And they have no fear of prosecution. They don't care if they get caught lying, and they know law enforcement will not arrest them, so they don't fear prosecution at all. So these type of people that are sting operatives, civilian sting operatives for law enforcement, they're the type of people that they'll help law enforcement to cover a cop's ass if a cop's guilty of murder. And they're the same type of people that will give innocent people the blame in order to cover a cop's ass. I don't know how to explain these people to you in a way that you can understand, other than to refer to them as a clan, because that's the best way to describe these type of people. They're they're connected to law enforcement in one way or another way, and they usually try to hide it. The civilian operatives for law enforcement usually try to hide their connections with law enforcement. Their connections being they're either buddies to people in law enforcement, or they're relatives to people in law enforcement, or they're girlfriends of people in law enforcement. These type of, I can't refer to them as anything other than a clan, because it's pretty much, it fits them the most. It's the only description that fits them the most. And law enforcement uses these type of civilians in their sting operations in order to frame and or to kill off people. And in all sting operations, they use the police or the sheriffs to use their police powers to take over the surrounding area in order to control it for their operatives. I'll give everybody's familiar with sting drug bust. Everybody's heard about that kind of sting on the news. Well, what does law enforcement do in a drug bust sting? They take over an entire apartment building. An entire apartment building. And then they just spread word on the street that, yeah, you can buy drugs here, you can buy drugs here, like that. And then that's how they lure people in. And then they, well, what is that? What is that? Think about that sting right there, because what is law enforcement doing? Why, law enforcement is demonstrating the fact that apartment managers or landlords will allow law enforcement to take over an entire apartment area for their operations. Okay, now keep that in mind. You're already aware of that. That's open knowledge. Everybody knows about drug bustings. Well, guess what? Law enforcement takes over apartment building. They'll take over an entire area for other purposes. They'll use the same tactic in order to frame somebody for a homicide. They'll use the same sting tactic to frame somebody as a pedophile. They use the same tactics. And instead of having their operatives dressed like drug dealers that are out on the streets using street theater performances, and they're pretending to sell drugs in order to entrap people or to frame people, instead of them acting like drug dealers to frame people, what they do is they'll just dress up. They'll dress up like the person they're framing, and then they'll pretend to be a pedophile. And then their operatives take side shots and back shots and using photogenic photos, or they'll take fuzzy video from a distance that doesn't clearly show the person's face very well. And they'll stage and commit all the crimes, and then they just give you the blame. And news media goes along with this each and every fucking time and allows law enforcement to use their officers as doubles and permits law enforcement to give innocent people the blame using news media's access to the public. And they use this tactic to just vilify and vilify and vilify and just vilify the living shit out of innocent people. And innocent people they do this to are never afforded the opportunity to deny any fucking allegation at all. Now, they're pretty quiet out there right now. They usually are doing this because the last couple of days I've uploaded onto my YouTube channel quite a bit of, in the last couple of days, I've uploaded about 3 or 4 videos on my YouTube channel, basically just vlogs like this. So they're now aware that I'm being more active in recording their terrorizing and their and so they're deliberately they're stepping up the performances that they're doing out here in an attempt to get me at my doorway to record them. And the reason they're doing that, now I generally don't try to do that. I did it this one time, but I generally don't do this. And the reason why is because it only helps them. It doesn't help me. Because when I go open my door and I try to record the staged scenarios that where they're causing disturbances outside, and I try to record it, the operatives, the sting operatives that are on the other side of the apartment building, they have video cameras aimed at my apartment. So they're actually getting me on video stepping out of my door and holding up my cell phone like it's a camera and essentially using it like a camera. Well, see, they could use that video of me to try to make me look like a bad guy. And keep in mind, they were using a double to frame me as a pedophile. And I'm aware of this, but the whole city's not aware of it because news media will not, doesn't give a rat's ass if I prove cops are doing this. I'm not welcome to report these crimes. There's no news media anywhere that gives a shit if cops are framing people. Nobody will report this to anybody. So for law enforcement, all law enforcement concerns about is making their targets look like bad guys. That's all they care about. Because the people they frame and or murder off are never afforded the opportunity to publicly deny their bullshit or to defend themselves. So all law enforcement and news media concerns themselves with is making their targets, in other words, me, I'm their target. All they're concerned about is making me look like a bad guy. So anytime they can get me on video acting like I'm recording something, they can use that against me to make me look like a bad guy, and which is one of the reasons why they're stepping up the performances that they're doing out here. I'm already. It's as though it's like, oh God, how do you explain it? If you want to understand more about this shit, then learn about the KKK, because the KKK is the perfect example of what law enforcement is all about. They're organized people, whether they're in law enforcement or not in law enforcement. They're organized people that target people, and they agree to lie for one another, and they harass and terrorize and even murder off their targets. And yes, they vilify the shit out of their targets so that they look justified. And the only way to compare sting, the best way to understand and comprehend sting operations is to think of it as an organized attack by the KKK, because it's virtually the same fucking thing. The Portland Police Department is using their fastest police powers to take over the surrounding apartments, surrounding mine, and they're filling a lot of the apartments with their civilian operatives, and it's their civilian operatives usually that they have doing the performances. Now, in my particular situation is rather extreme, because of the fact that I actually documented the sting operation and documented the fact that the sting operation and their civilian whores committed a rape and a murder, and they fucking bragged about it to an entire Walmart store. And they know damn well I secured that recording. They know damn well I made multiple recordings of multiple copies of that recording, and that they destroyed and got rid of every single original copy of it that I had, with the exception of the one that I secured. They're aware of this. They're not happy about that. They know damn well I don't have a copy of it on me right now. They managed to, but remember, they poisoned me at that time. So I was severely debilitated at that point anyway, and was not able to secure multiple original copies of it, but I did secure one. The rest of the copies that I had of it, that were in my possession, and or the copies that I handed out to other people, they got rid of those. So they definitely want to cover that up, because they actually did. I made several copies of it, and I secured one copy of it, and the rest of the copies I handed out a couple of copies of it, and I kept one or two copies with me at the time, and they managed to get rid of all of them, with the exception of the one that I secured. So. And ironically, they started bragging on replacement audios, where they took the original audio and they just edited the shit out of it, and then they added new shit to it. And when I discovered that's what they did with the original audios that I had in my possession, that I had on our computer, they hacked our computer and they were editing the original that was on my computer, and they made edited versions of it, and they added new shit to it, new dialogue, all kinds of different shit to it. And I essentially realized, after listening to one of them, gee, they're actually admitting on their replacements that they poisoned me and they covered it up at the hospital, and that I can't get help. They're bragging that I can't get help from 911, and they're bragging that they pedophied me and all this shit. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Jesus Christ, this is a fucking admissible death threat where they're fucking bragging. They literally put this replacement in my audio in my fucking home, and they're fucking bragging on it. So I'm thinking to myself, gee, this is they just gave me a fucking admissible death threat. I'm like, God, now I got to secure their replacements they're putting in my home. I find myself, excuse me, I find myself in a situation where, Jesus Christ, they were bragging on admissible audio death threats. Now, that original audio where I put the recorder in my wife's purse and she ended up leaving the apartment with that audio recorder running in her purse, it's debatable whether or not that would be admissible or not. Keep in mind, I am a witness to their crimes, and